Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching. For me, it's 4:26 a.m. here in the Eastern Time Zone of the United States. It is Wednesday, the 17th of December, 2025. Today, we're going to read through and talk about verse or chapter 21 in the book of First Samuel. And as a reminder, this is the last one of these I'm going to do until the week after Christmas. Between now and then, I will be doing some short things from the New Testament and application. And then on Christmas Eve, I will be at a different location, but I'm going to be reading the Christmas story from the book of Luke. So hopefully that will bless somebody like it blesses me every time I get to read it. All right, so this is David. He has just had that episode where Jonathan finally sees that his father does definitely want to kill David, and now David is fleeing, and here's where we pick up. Now David came to Nob to Ahimelech, the priest, and Ahimelech was afraid when he met David, and he said to him, "Why are you alone, and no one is with you?" So David said to Ahimelech the priest, "The king has ordered me on some business and said to me, 'Do not let anyone know about the business on which I send you, or what I have commanded you. And I have directed my young men to such and such a place. Now, therefore, what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread in my hand, or whatever can be found.' And the priest answered David and said, 'There's no common bread on hand, but there is holy bread, if the young men have at least kept themselves from women.' Then David answered the priest and said to him, 'Truly, women have been kept from us about 3 days since I came out, and the vessels of the young men are holy, and the bread is in effect common, even though it was consecrated in the vessel this day.' So the priest gave him the holy bread, for there was no bread there but the showbread, which had been taken from before the Lord, in order to put hot bread in its place on the day when it was taken away. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord, and his name was Doeg, an Edomite, and the chief of the herdsmen who belonged to Saul. And David said to Abimelech, 'Is there not here on hand a spear or a sword? For I've brought neither my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste.' So the priest said, 'The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, is there it is, wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you take that, take it. For there's none other like it, no one here.' And David said, 'There is none like it. Give it to me.' Then David arose and fled that day from before Saul and went to Achish, the son of the king of Gath. And the servants of Achish said to him, 'Is this not David, the king of the land? Did they not sing of him to one another in dances, saying, Saul has killed thousands and David has killed 10,000s?' Now David took these words to heart and was very much afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. So he changed his behavior before them, pretended madness in their hands, scratched on the doors of the gate, and let his saliva fall down on his beard. Then Achish said to his servants, 'Look, you see this man is insane. Why have you brought him to me? Have I the need of a madman, that you have brought this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house?' All right, so it ends kind of weird, and there's a little bit there I see, but there is some symbolism in this passage and just some things of note. So Nob is the town, the city where the tabernacle is. So David flees, and he actually goes to the place where the tabernacle is, and he goes to the priest there, Ahimelech, and his name means brother of the king, although he's not the brother. And he's there, and he's hungry, and he asks the priest for something for him. he makes up this story about why he's there so that he won't be in trouble, I guess. And then he asks the priest for anything, for bread. And the priest says, hey, there's no common bread here. There's no regular bread. But there's this holy bread. It's the show bread. It's the bread from inside the tabernacle. They change that out every day with fresh bread. So this would be the bread that had been taken away, kind of like day old bread, but it had been there in the tabernacle and consecrated for God. So they take it out and switch it out. So it's really not supposed to be eaten by anybody but the priest, but there are provisions that it can be eaten by somebody else in the right situation. And this seems to be that situation because the priest says, here, I do have these. And then David makes the point that it's in effect common bread. And he's saying that because it's no longer actively in service for God in the tabernacle. It's very interesting on this passage about the bread that Jesus actually recalls this passage in Matthew 12. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. So it's a key passage that does point to kind of a message and a thought. There's this weird situation here where we see this character, Doeg the Edomite, this head of the herdsman for Saul. An Edomite would be a descendant from Esau, so he's not a true Israelite. He's a descendant from Esau, but he's working for Saul. You're going to see the significance of Doeg later, and it is going to be significant because he's going to tell Saul about what happened. And then if you read Psalm 52, David actually wrote that about Doeg and what he did. David's got his bread. He's on the run. Now he needs a weapon because he doesn't have one. So he asked this priest, and lo and behold, what is the only weapon there? The weapon there is the sword of Goliath. And Goliath, if you remember, David killed him. So he takes that, and that is a reminder to David probably about God's power and how true victories are through God's power. So it would have been taking him back to that battle and what God did through him. And then David leaves there. And where does he flee? Crazy enough, he flees to Gath, and that's where Goliath was the champion of the Philistines from Gath. So he goes, and he now has Goliath's sword somewhere hidden on him, I'm guessing. And he ends up in a place that's not a great place. This is ruled by the Philistines. This king is a Philistine king, and he's the one who sent Goliath in that battle. So there's this crazy scene where the people recognize David. They tell the king, hey, this is David. And they remind him not about the Goliath deal, but about what the people of Israel and the people saying, and about how many people he's killed. And that would be all Philistine people that he's killed. So David comes up with this plan immediately to just act crazy. So he slobbers, gets slobber coming down his beard. He acts crazy. He starts scratching at the doorpost. So he acts like he's gone insane. And it works because basically the king says, get this guy out of here. So even though this is like the weirdest, one of the more weird sections of the Bible, and there's not a ton that you can say, well, this is a great lesson here. There is a lesson there. And really the lesson is caught up in this whole bread deal. And the reason that I say it's a lesson, it's really a lesson in the fact that mercy is more important than this ceremonial law. And it's called out by Jesus, I said, in Matthew 12. So in Matthew 12, there's this story. And Jesus and his disciples are walking through the grain fields on Sabbath. So Saturday, which is the holy day, you're not supposed to do any work, you're not supposed to cook, whatever. But they were hungry. So they're hungry and they're going through these grain fields, and his disciples, they just start pulling the heads of the grain, and they start separating the good stuff from the bad, and then they're just popping and eating it raw, eating that grain. And when the Pharisees saw that, they said, "Hey, look, his disciples are breaking the Sabbath laws because they're working." Then Jesus answers them like this in verse 3. He answered, "Haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do, but only for the priests. Or haven't you read in the law that on the Sabbath, the priests in the temple desecrate the day and yet are innocent?" So what he's saying is there is that ceremonial law, and there's the law of the Sabbath, but there are some things that are more important than that. And then, Jesus says that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. It's this lesson about mercy. And we see the mercy of the priest here giving David this bread. We see the mercy that Christ is preaching to these Pharisees. And that's a mercy that we really need to keep top of mind too. There are these, in certain churches still, it's very, very conventional, and they are very ritualistic and hold to certain things. And some people can be the same way and hold to certain things. But we need to remember from stories like this in the Old Testament, and stories like what Jesus was saying in the New, that mercy is way more important than ceremony. And we need to keep that top of mind when we are talking to people, interacting with people, helping people, loving people. We need to keep that mercy that is modeled for us in different places, and we need to be a picture of that to our world around us. God, thank you for your word. Thank you for all of it. God, it is amazing that thousands of years ago, hundreds of years apart, stories were written that point to Jesus and that Jesus points back to. And Lord, they all teach us the way that you want us to be, to reflect you. We love you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks for your time today. Again, it's going to be a minute before I see you again in this setting. It's going to be about a week and a half. Until then, I will see you in some brief messages, and then Christmas Eve we'll read